You guys wanted this video, so I'm doing it. Strap in, it's gonna be a long and bumpy road. My allergies are like acting a right fool today, so sorry if I'm real sniffly or look like I'm crying. I swear I'm not. Today I'm going to be doing my review of This Is Where It Ends by Marieke Nijkamp. I read this book in June, and if you watched my wrap-up or my mid-year check-in tag, you will already know that I did not like this book. And I'm going to talk about why. Before I start, I am going to throw a trigger warning out there. This book deals with issues of school violence, guns, domestic or child abuse, sexual assault, and physical disability. So if any of those things might trigger you, this might be a good time to step away from this video. Alright, that's out of the way. Let's get started. This book came out in early 2016 and takes place during the 54 minutes of a school shooting. This book has 4 narrators, and each of them is in some way connected to the shooter. The shooter's name is Tyler, and each of our 4 narrators are Autumn, who is Tyler's sister, Sylv, who is Autumn's girlfriend, Tomas, who is Sylv's twin brother, and also has a history of fights and violence with Tyler, and Claire, who is Tyler's ex-girlfriend. Claire has a younger brother named Matt, who is also a major character in the story, though he is not a narrator. This book is really character-driven, so each of these character dynamics plays an important role in what happens here, but I don't think they were handled very well, and I'll get into that the further along I go. I gave this book 1 star. I initially gave it 2, but then I thought about it a little more, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got, so I actually went back and changed my rating. Hopefully by the end of this, you will understand why. So I guess let's just get into a few things. The first thing I'm going to talk about is what I liked about this book, which was honestly not much. I like that the author did not shy away from sensitive issues, though I don't think it was handled particularly well. And then I did like the character, like the relationship, the dynamic between Sylv and Tomas. They have a really close relationship, and even at one point in the book they had addressed the fact that they drifted apart for a while, but you can still tell that they deeply care about each other. So I did like that. Now let's get into the things that I disliked, which is going to be most of this video. The first thing that I disliked was Tyler, like the character. And I know what you're fucking thinking. Sam, he's the shooter. Of course you don't like him. And while that's true to an extent, that's not what I had an issue with. I had an issue with the way his character was portrayed. Tyler is portrayed throughout this entire book as this super villain-like character. It's fucking ridiculous. Even in flashbacks, when you're like learning his backstory and you're supposed to be kind of learning like what motivated him to be the way that he is, he's already a bad guy. He starts out as a bad guy and he just gets worse as the story goes on, and we are never given any reason to empathize with him in any way whatsoever. Some examples of the shitty things that good Tyler did. Tyler found out that his sister was dating a girl, and then after that, because he's a homophobic fucking asshole with control issues, decided to sexually assault, flat out rape, and threaten his sister's girlfriend pretty openly for a pretty long time. He also then ratted out a secret that his sister was keeping from their dad, like to their dad, and then watched with glee as his father beat the ever-loving shit out of his sister, who was supposed to be the only person that he loved. He also, while sexually assaulting and flat-out raping this other girl, was cheating on his girlfriend, and then got mad when she broke up with him over it. These are just some examples of the kind of guy that Tyler was before he snapped. Aside from just being a bad dude, he doesn't really have a whole lot of other characteristics. He's a pretty flat character, and I don't know, it's like the author tries to portray him as more of a, like, dimensional character by having him say things like, you all took everything away from me and now you're gonna know how it feels. And just having him say things like that while not giving us any example of what that means doesn't just magic that into existence. Like, that's not how writing works. So that's a problem. In addition to that, Tyler is also just like a mess of contradictions. He and Claire break up, and he's still pretty friendly with her, as well as with her younger brother Matt, who he was always pretty close with. But then he shoots and kills Matt, and also at one point makes a comment that he has a score to settle with Claire. He also apparently, at the beginning of the day when they were getting ready for school, tried to tell Autumn to stay home that day. I assume as some sort of means of protecting her because she's his sister and the only one that he loves, or what the fuck ever. But then he specifically seeks her out as a target. So if he had intentions of having her be a target, why did he tell her to stay home? And if he wanted to protect her and told her to stay home, then why did he seek her out as a target? It doesn't make any fucking sense. And I don't know if all of this weird contradiction with his relationship with Autumn was supposed to be a way of making their relationship seem like it was complicated and nuanced, but it certainly didn't give that impression. It just came across as lazy storytelling, and it's just contradictory and unrealistic. I don't know any siblings who have a relationship like that. And I know some siblings with some rocky relationships. So that's number one. Tyler is just big ol' fucking mess. Alright, just as a character. The next thing that I kind of really thought was a miss on the author's part in this book, something I disliked, is that the character of Claire doesn't really do anything to advance the plot of the story at all, and she didn't even really need to be there. She's not even in the school when the shooting starts, so she spends most of the story running around trying to figure out what's going on and making things more difficult for the police. I think it would have been better to have her brother Matt take on the narrator role, because he was in the auditorium and had a much bigger part in the actual story. And while I'm on the topic of Matt, I just plain flat out do not like the way his character was handled. He has some physical limitations due to his lupus and needing crutches to get around, but for some reason, aside from Tyler, who we are given the impression was always pretty cool to Matt, and apparently only Matt, they all speak to him like he's an idiot, which is fucking infuriating. Just because someone has a physical disability does not mean they lack intelligence. In fact, everything we actually see of his character, he comes across as very intelligent and witty, and sounds like he'd be really cool to be around. And I think it's fucking absurd that even his mom and both of his sisters speak to him as if he's a baby. The next thing that pisses me off about this book is the relationship that exists between Sylv and Autumn. These are two characters who are in a lesbian relationship, and their relationship, it's not good. I don't know. They don't really have any chemistry that's portrayed very well in the story, and they don't communicate with each other at fucking all. Okay? Like, they don't understand each other, and they admit this, and they both know it, but they're also keep saying they're in love. I don't know. It's just weird. It's like, I love you, but I don't trust you with my emotions. That's not how relationships work. In addition to that, like I said, they have no chemistry. They barely even make eye contact or touch one another, even in flashbacks when they're not in the middle of a traumatic situation. They never talk about anything real or anything at all, honestly. And if they didn't keep saying that they were in love, you would barely even realize that they knew each other for this entire fucking book. Autumn, as a character, is really, really self-involved, and she doesn't even seem to notice how physically and emotionally uncomfortable Sylv gets every time Tyler is mentioned. Like, even fucking mentioned, let alone actually in the same physical space as them. And understandably, by the way, Sylv is uncomfortable at the mention of Tyler. He fucking raped her and threatened her repeatedly. Granted, she never tells Autumn that any of that happened, which is like a whole other issue, and I know that a lot of times assault goes unreported, but I feel like it would be good to like let your girlfriend know, hey, your brother's not such a good dude. That's just not how people in relationships behave around each other. Usually, if you need emotional support, you lean on your romantic partner for that a lot, and neither of them does that, and it just doesn't come across as a real relationship. Just saying two characters are in love doesn't make it true. And that's like, I think the theme for this book is just saying it doesn't make it so. Moving on. The next thing that I dislike. The characters of Sylve and Tomas are Latinx characters, but the only reason you know that at all is because of the occasional use of random Spanish words and phrases. Mostly things like Sylve will slip in a random Spanish phrase in her thoughts, and they call their grandpa abuelo. Beyond that, there's no real mention of their culture or their family dynamics or anything that I think would probably shape them. And I really think that the author missed an opportunity to create more dynamic characters by only implying their non-whiteness and not really addressing their culture and making it a larger part of who those characters are. I'd like to step away from this for a second and mention that it probably doesn't help that I listened to the audiobook for this, and the audiobook was narrated by a full cast, but from what I was able to gather from Googling and from my knowledge of who some of the narrators were, the entire cast was made up of white people, or at the very least people of European descent, and it made the characters' culture come across as more of an afterthought than anything else, and I don't know if that's because it was written that way or because it was narrated that way, but either way it wasn't very clear. In the complete contrast to that, there is another character of color in this. His name is Farid. They call him Far, and he's Tomas's best friend, and he is a character that is entirely defined by his otherness. Basically anytime we see him, his accent is mentioned or somehow indicated, as is the fact that he grew up in a war zone in Afghanistan. Beyond that, you know nothing else about him. Like, you don't learn anything about his personality or like who his character is. The non-white characters that are more developed as characters, aka Sylve and Tomas, barely have their culture even addressed. We don't even know specifically if they're Mexican American, if they're Puerto Rican. We just know that they are from a Spanish-speaking family. And the one character that has his culture addressed more has no other characteristics. He's a shadow of a character at best. And I'm not sure what the correct way to go about representing these characters would be, because I am a white person who is often finds people like me represented in fiction, but I feel like there should be some sort of in-between that can help create a richer story that makes these characters feel like real characters. The final, and I think one of the biggest things that pisses me off about this book, is that almost every single thing the characters do during the shooting, almost every single choice that they make, is basically a guide of everything you shouldn't be doing in an active shooter situation. I'll give you some examples. The character of Claire, remember her? I don't think she's necessary, but initially, she actually withholds essential information from the police about her relationship with Tyler and some things about his family life that might have helped them figure out things a little bit sooner. The next example I have of what not to do in an active shooter situation is that Tomas and Far actually directly disregard police instruction when they call the police to report that the shooting is happening, and they don't get to safety. They instead directly put themselves in danger to try to get other people to safety. And while trying to get other people to safety is an admirable thing in general, it actually ends up making the situation a lot fucking worse. Tomas also uses this heroic moment that he's having as a way to hit on a girl he's always had a crush on, which is kind of ridiculous in general. But what's even more ridiculous is that he actually gets annoyed that she's more focused on getting to safety than being grateful for the fact that he's a hero. It's fucking ridiculous. It makes you question his motives for doing anything heroic in the first place, and it kind of contradicts everything that they've tried to say about his character up until that point. Another stupid thing Tomas does while he's being a hero is once Tyler leaves the auditorium because he's seeking out all of these people who've tried to flee for safety, Tomas seeks him out and confronts, antagonizes him. Do not antagonize a emotionally and mentally unstable person who is holding a gun. That's just not something you should do. It's not going to help you get to safety. It's not going to help anybody that you're trying to protect get to safety. Don't do it. Kind of on a similar note, Autumn, though she doesn't antagonize him, Autumn confronts and tries to talk Tyler down. She kind of tries to appeal to his emotional side and, reason with him when he's actively seeking her out to hurt her and has mentioned that she's one of his targets. She should have hidden or tried to get herself to safety rather than trying to reason with him, because he clearly wasn't in a place to be reasoned with or appealed to emotionally. It doesn't make any sense. And she does this not once but twice. She actually ends up getting herself shot in this situation, though Tyler does not kill her. He shoots her in the knee so that it will ruin her future as a dancer, which is kind of a different sort of fucked up. I don't know, everything these characters do just puts themselves further in danger and makes the situation a whole lot worse instead of better. In conclusion, I guess, now that I've said what I must say, overall, in case it wasn't clear through the rest of this, I don't recommend this book, and I especially don't recommend the audiobook because, like I said, it makes a lot of the racial stuff, like the characters' racial representation, come across even more poorly. And it also just kind of pisses me off that the company that made the audiobook actually decided that casting a bunch of white actors to play Latinx characters was a good idea. That's just stupid. I don't think the characters were well developed or fleshed out, which made the whole book come across as lazy and poorly thought out. There was diversity and representation of various marginalized groups there, but the characters were so flat that it kind of just didn't come across that way. It just kind of made it seem like there was diversity there for the sake of there being diversity there, and it wasn't done very well. And the author was clearly trying to make a statement, but it's not really clear what that statement was. She tried to address too many things in a very short span of time, and I just don't think it worked. Let me know if you've read this and what your thoughts were. Let me know if my opinion has swayed yours at all, or if you are going to read this to form your own opinion. Let me know if I'm just talking out of my ass, because sometimes I don't really know if I know what I'm talking about. Basically, just talk to me in the comments, and have a great day. Bye.